learn. Okay, so here we're holding in Parshas Miketz, Perek Mem Gimel, and I want to continue about something we said last week. Last week we noted the following, and I'll review it in brief. In Pasuk Tezayin, Yosef orders a feast to be prepared. And he says, Tvoyach Tevach V'Hochin, Perek Mem Gimel, Pasuk Yudzayin, Tezayin, I'm sorry, Tvoyach Tevach V'Hochin, prepare them a slaughter animals and prepare them a feast. They're afraid that they're being brought into the house of Yosef, and they speak to the person, Pasuk Yates, they speak to the person at the door of the house, and they explain that they're good guys, they brought back the money, and only after he reassures them that he's not there to frame them for the money, to blame them for it. Only then do they enter the house. Okay. What we spoke about last week is that in Mishlei, Perek Zayin and Perek Tes, both of them, but specifically Perek Tes for these purposes for now, talk about the following. In Perek Tes, it talks about a contrast between wisdom, and wisdom is a woman personified who makes a meal. And there it says also tovcha tivcha, it's double lashon, and invites in the youth to come become wise. That's one woman in Perek Tes and Mishlei, and the other woman is the woman, the seductress, who invites in the youth, and she sits at the door of the house, Pesach Besa, tempting him to come in. And so similarly over here, we said, okay, that, as we spoke in Parshas Vayeshev, that is alluding to Yosef's trial and Yosef's coming of age. Yosef starts off as a nar. It's the beginning of Parshas Vayeshev. And he's not worthy of being king yet. He's young, and he's full of himself, and he has to become wise, and he has to go through certain tribulations that test him and make him grow till the point that he's able to be a wise king, wise ruler. And part of that is that he's tempted by the Eishes Potiphar. So Yosef has to become the wise son instead of being the son. That's what a lot of Mishnah is about. The son has to become wise instead of the son following the Isha, the dangerous Isha. And that's what happened in the Yosef story. There in Perek Tes, it says she sits on Pesach Besa, the Isha, the Isha's Ksilos, the foolish woman. Pesach Besa means, okay, there's this liminal space where it's dangerous. You don't want to cross that threshold if you don't know what's on the other side. Similarly, in our story, Yosef, who may or may not be posing a threat to the brothers, they are afraid to enter the Pesach Habayis. And then it was mentioned last week, well, what's really the question about Yosef? Is he out to get the brothers or not? So, well, that depends. Did Yosef grow up or not? In other words, has he become wise and he's going to act with great wisdom? Or is he going to be vindictive and taka, meaning we know he's Yosef, right? So is he really going to try to harm them? So, well, did Yosef grow into the mature adult, wise adult that he's supposed to? Well, it all depends on what happened in the past few parshas, meaning did he withstand temptation with Potiphar or not? So he did. But if he didn't, had he not, I should say, then his house would be dangerous for the brothers to enter. So the potential danger in this house that the brothers are avoiding maps onto the same danger that the Eishes Ksilos has as opposed to Eishes Chachama, and therefore we have the same terms, Pesach Habayis and Tov Chotif. Okay? Now, that's what we said last week. Now I want to talk about Perek Zayin in Mishlei, which has a very similar than structure to Perek Tes. Perek Zayin in Mishlei talks about his advice to the son. Mishlei is written like education to a young man. So Perek Zayin begins, it's addressing the son, and again telling him to follow wisdom, because wisdom will protect you from the Isha Zara, Pasuk Hey. So there's wisdom. So basically the young man has two paths, right? Either he can become wise, or he could follow his temptations. And wisdom is going to protect him. And then there's this description of the Isha Zara, who lies in wait for the Nar, you see Pasuk Zayin. She looks for the Nar who doesn't have a mind, who's not fully developed yet, and she tempts him. and she tempts him. And this psukim over there about the temptation, actually, Mitzrayim is referenced here in Pasuk Tazayin, which explicitly, so there's explicit references to the Yosef story. But another one is that, take a look at Pasuk Yud Tes and Chaf. Part of her temptation is she says the following: Ein ha'ish beveisai, halach b'derech me'rachik. The husband's not home; he went far away. Tzor ha'kesef lokach biyado. He took the money with him. He took the bundle of money with him, which is to say, he didn't just step out for a minute for a smoke. He's on a business trip. L'yom ha'kesef yavi beisa. He's only coming home. Yom ha'kesef means the new moon. We'll talk about that soon. Kesem means covered. So he's only coming home. I know the date that he's coming home. He's going to be gone till Rosh Chodesh. Okay? And she, the pasuk says, leads him astray, and he follows her. Pasuk Chavbez, he follows her like a shur to slaughter. I'll tell you. Okay, now, what I noticed was that, see, we established a parallel. Perek Tez, which talks about the woman, wisdom as opposed to the foolish woman, tempting the youth or instructing the youth, has a parallel to our story, because there it uses the terms Tavcha Tivcha and Pesach HaBayis. And in our story, Yosef invites him to his house, which is maybe dangerous for them, maybe not, depending on Yosef, where Yosef himself is holding. And here in Perek Zayin, we also have parallels. Why? Because look what it says. It says, Tzor HaKesef Lokach Biyadai. Where's the other place we have Tzor HaKesef? It says in the end of the, it says in Parshas Miketz that they came home and they found Tzrevis Kaspeim. Tzrevis Kaspeim, the bundles of Kesef. And Yaakov told them, take it in your hands. And the pasuk says they took the Kesef, Lakhu Biyadon, to return. Those Tzrevis Kesef that they found in their sacks, they brought back to Yosef. Okay. Plus, the pasuk then also references a shor that's going to Tevach, and Yosef told them, plus, and more significantly, two more points. The pasuk says the Yom HaKesed Yom HaBeisi. He's coming home on the day of the moon is being covered. The other place we have Yom Kesed, that pasuk I referenced before, and that's in that mizmar about Yosef going out to Mitzrayim. That's mizmar Pei Aleph, which we keep on going back to. Edus b'Yosef Samai b'Tseisel that's Mitzrayim. And that whole mizmar has always been about Yosef, and that one mysterious pasuk is that pasuk. Blow the shofar on Rosh Chodesh on the day that the moon is covered. What is that doing in that mizmar? But here we have the temptation of the young man. It says, "Oh, my husband's coming back on the Yom HaKesed." Okay, and in the mizmar about Yosef going out to Mitzrayim, it says, "Blow the shofar on Yom HaKesed." That's the only two places in Tanakh. Maybe there's one other place where Rosh Chodesh is called Kesed. Kesed as in the day that the moon is covered. Okay, so how do we put this all together? So the pshat is like this, and this shir is very complicated, so it's tough. We've been going through these mizmarim, Pe Aleph, Lamed Gimel, and Kuf Mem Zayin, the three mizmarim that we've been completely referencing constantly regarding the Yosef story. And in the three mizmarim, there's a talk about the word of Hashem. So let's see, in Mizmor Lamed Gimel, Ranuk Tzadikim B'Hashem, it talks about B'Dvar Hashem Shemayim Nasu. In Mizmor Pei Aleph, it talks about Choik and Mishpat. Choik L'Yisrael and Mishpat L'Dekei Ya'akov. And in Kuf Mem Zayin, we have Magid Dvorov L'Ya'akov, Chukum Mishpat L'Yisrael, Dovar, the Choik and the Mishpat. So all these mizmarim, among many of the common themes, one of the themes that are common to all three is that they all talk about Yisrael as being the ones that hear the word of Hashem, which is His law, His Chayk and Mishpat. Okay, now this has to do with Yosef. Why? Because the beginning of Vayeshev is that Yosef has a sense of a dover. Pasuk says, "Va'aviv shamar es hadover," and the brothers hated him al chaloim esav va'al devarov, because a dover means the word. What's the word? The word is the word of Hashem. Yosef has a chaloim. That means he doesn't quite have the word of Hashem, but he has some sort of sense. So it's like, what's a chaloim? A chaloim is that there's some dover. Dover means a clear word, which is the word of Hashem. There's some dover in the future that's trickling down now to the present, and you have an inkling of it, even though you don't actually have the davar. So the other shomar as a davar, that says in Parashat Yeshiv, means that Yaakov does have faith that Yosef's chaloim is supposed to turn into a davar. We're eventually going to reach the Dvar Hashem. Yosef is on to something. There's some Dvar Hashem that's waiting for us in the future that he's perceiving even before it's completely clear. And eventually it's going to come. Okay. So now that's why these mizmarim that are about Yosef, about the story of Yosef, one of the prominent themes is eventually we get Dvar Hashem Shemayim Nasu, eventually we get the Magid Dvar of Yaakov, Hukum Mishpat of Yisrael, and the other one is Chayk Yisrael Hu Mishpat of Yaakov. In other words, Yisrael, unlike the Amim, Yisrael does eventually reach to Dvar Hashem and know the law, know the Chayk Mishpat, which is Dvar Hashem. Okay. So now I want to explain to you what's going on with this Keseh pasuk. The pasuk says in Tehillim, I forgot where, Kuf Hey, Kuvav, at Eis Boy Devar about Yosef, until the time of his davar came. Kuf Hey Perik, a pasuk Yates. Yosef was locked up in jail. Ad Eis Boy Devarai, until the time for his davar came, or until the time for his davar to come. Imras Hashem Tzrafasu. The word of Hashem refined him. Okay, so Yosef had a sense of a davar, but it wasn't the time yet for that davar. He had to undergo a whole process till he's ready to live up to the davar. So Yosef had an inkling of a future davar. He sensed that he's supposed to be king. He had these dreams, but it wasn't the time yet. So what does that mean? That means he's not ready for it. So therefore, the word of Hashem refines him. So until the time of the davar comes to be, that it means he's not ready for it yet. Something has to happen to him. So the word of Hashem, as in the fact that Yosef was supposed to be a king, which it was, he conceived that, he perceived that before it was really time for it. But that very fact is going to refine him and make him suffer, because that fact that he's supposed to be king is working on him to make him worthy of living up to that davar. Okay, that's the pasuk in Tehillim. But the point is that there's an ace. There's a time where Yosef's word where Yosef could attain the davar. Okay, so now I want to tell you why is the Mizmor Pei Aleph talks about Yosef coming at the time? Why is it talk about Rosh Chodesh? When Tiku B'Chodesh Shofar B'Kesed Yom Chagenu? When should we blow the shofar? Ki Choik u'Mishpat. When do we celebrate the fact that Hashem speaks to us and He gives us Choik and Mishpat? Rosh Chodesh. Why? I think the Pshat is Pasha. Because the idea is that there's an ace, that even though Klal Yisrael is destined for a davar, like Yosef was, our destiny to hear the davar sometimes has to come to the time for that. Time has to pass. We have to reach the time for the davar to come true, like Yosef, who had to wait till the time. That means, yes, Yosef is destined for greatness, but it has to reach the case, it has to reach the time. Now, what's the time? That means like there's a time of renewal. There's a new time. Rosh Chodesh is like the time of renewal. So we're saying, that's why Tikku B'Chodesh, when it's the time for something to happen, that's when the davar manifests. And more than that, Tikku B'Chodesh B'Kesel Yom Chagenu, according to Chazal, is talking about Rosh Hashanah, because it says B'Kesel Yom Chagenu. So it's a Chag, and it's Keseh. Keseh means Rosh Chodesh. So what's the Keseh and the Chag? That is Rosh Hashanah. And Rosh Hashanah is the day that Yosef left jail. Chazal say, is Rosh Hashanah. So the pasuk in there in Tehillim is saying like this: when it's a time of renewal, when it's the ace, when it's a new time is Rosh Chodesh. Spitz new time is Rosh Hashanah, Rosh Chodesh. So that's when the word of Hashem could become manifest, because sometimes the word of Hashem needs time to lapse until you can get there. Okay, fine. That's the point of Rosh Chodesh in the Mizmor of Yosef. Now, let's take this a little further. The pasuk says Yosef is waiting until the time for his word to come. Remember, the woman, the seductress, tells her, this youth that she's trying to tempt, she tells him he's not here. He's going to come home Rosh Chodesh, right? We have time. There's another person who was away from home until some time, and that is the husband of Mr. Potiphar. How do I know he's away from home? Because the pasuk says, in Perek Lamed Tes, As the pasuk say, right? She left his clothing there. Ad boy adoinov al beisai, until he came home. In other words, he was not home. He was away from home, and there was time. Ad boy adoinov al beisai. She left. Is that the pasuk? Right. Pasuk Tezayim. Periklam Tez Pasuk Tezayim. V'tanach bigdo etzla ad boy adoinov al beisai. In other words, that's the message of the Isha that he's away. He's not coming home for a while, so we could do what we want. Then she wanted to frame Yosef, so she left it there. Ad boy adoinov al beisai. Okay, now let's think of this. So we have this. The Isha in Mishlei tells the youth, don't worry, he's not going to be home for a while. He's come back on the only next month, first of next month. And Yosef was tempted with the woman whose husband was away and had to come ad by Adonov. And Yosef, it says in Tehillim, had to wait to become king ad by Devarai. So the Yosef is in a situation. So you see, there's a parallel over here that on the one hand, Yosef is waiting for his destiny to manifest of the Davar Hashem. On the other hand, he's in a situation where the woman's saying, like it says in Mishlei, we could wait, there's time till the Yom HaKesed. So you see how in Mishlei it talks about the Yom HaKesed. The woman says, don't worry, he's only coming home on Rosh Chodesh. And what it says in Tehillim about Yosef, that when Rosh Chodesh comes, that's when the Dvar Hashem manifests. So you see Yosef is experiencing those two things, because Yosef is waiting to reach the Davar, that's his destiny. At the same time that he's waiting to reach the Davar, he has to undergo the temptation of the Isha, who's saying, hey, there's time. Nothing's happening now anyways. So that nothing's happening is, look, you're waiting for your davar. That's in Yosef, you're waiting for your davar. What does it say in that pasuk? Ad eis boy devare imras Hashem tzarfasu. That same waiting that Yosef has to wait till he can reach his davar, that same waiting, he undergoes tziruf during that waiting. And the tziruf is that the woman says to him, hey, you're waiting. My husband's away. There's time. So he has to withstand that, and that's the tziruf that makes him roy till the Yom HaKesed Yom Chagenu, when the Chayke Mishpat, when the Dvar Hashem comes to be revealed. Okay, so now, and then I'll bring it all back to our parsha soon. But that just parenthetically on that pasuk in Mishlei that says the man is not home, he's far away. Rashi says it's a mashal. This pasuk, my husband's not home, he's far away. It's a mashal. It's a mashal for the temptation of Klal Yisrael who say Hashem's not home, he went far away, meaning he left this world, he gave over this world to the horrible people like we see today. So like, why should we serve Hashem? You know, he took a break. He's on vacation. Hashem is on vacation. Like say, when Hashem comes back, it's Hashem's come back. Then we'll worry about it. But now, don't worry about it. Then we want to serve him. But the world is knitting biyad Rasha. Like, what's that? What are we doing here? Okay, and some current events. But the point is that you see how that's derived from the pasuk, because that pasuk that's talking about a woman talking about her husband and we have time, also in the Yosef story has another meaning of Yosef is waiting for the word of Hashem to be manifest. Until such time that the word of Hashem is manifest, Yosef is abandoned by Hashem. So that's why he's waiting for the word of Hashem to become clear. So that same pasuk that talks about the man not being home, and it's not Rosh Chodesh yet, it's not the new time yet. And that new time was when Hashem is going to return and the word is going to return, and Yosef is going to have Ashkacha again. So that's why you can read into that pasuk that the pasuk is an allusion to the fact that Hashem is away. Okay, now what am I doing with these? What's my point about these psukim? So now, why are these psukim? I started with like this. What?
Hashem is also away from them.
He's away. He's on vacation. Yeah, away from everyone.
But the Yosef story is also away.
Yeah.
Meaning because the brothers don't have reputation.
He's away from everyone.
Because they
That's right. He's away from Yosef. He's away from everyone. He's Yosef. When he comes out of jail, then Parah says, he's the Isha Shuach Elikim.
Right.
That's when he starts coming back. And that's what we mentioned on that pasuk. Yosef said, Parah said, there's no one like this that has Ruach Elikim. Nobody. I, the brothers. Teretz is the brothers lost Nebuah. I, Yaakov also lost Nebuah. Till he reunited with Yosef, he lost Nebuah. So Parah was saying, you're the only one. And that's only started when Yosef came out of jail. That's the Kates, the Miketz Shasayim Yomim, and that's when Hashem started to reveal himself once again. First to Yosef and then to everyone.
That's part of it, because if you don't during the interim, right, when Hashem is away, if you don't keep Chaykum Mishpat,
yeah,
then you never get it back.
right. So but the interim time. No, see, the thing is like this: the interim time. It's not quite Chaykum Mishpat. The way it's described in Tehillim, Chaykum Mishpat in Tehillim means when we could hear the Dvar. In other words, when we have clarity, you got to do what? Yes, exactly. You can't do right. You can't do right. You can't do right. You still have morals. You still know what's right and wrong. There's some lack of clarity. You don't know the davar. You don't know the Chaykum Mishpat. You know, I don't know what you do, know what you don't. It was a good question. Something like you know what not to do, maybe if you don't know what to do. No, that might be what it is. Like you have no sense of what you're building. You have no sense of what you're striving for, but you still know right from wrong. So I mean, you know what's wrong, basically. You know what not to do. That might be actually the Haggadah. Okay, so therefore, what's my point? My point's like this. So here in Perek Zayin, which is temptation of the brothers, temptation of the young man in Mishlei, we have these same words about the Tzur HaKesef, which the brothers had over here, the Tzur HaKesef in their hands. And there the pasuk says that the youth follows the woman, this seductress, like a short to the tevach. And here the pasuk says tvoyach tevach v'hachim, which you mentioned last week, that this tvoyach tevach, besides being a nice banquet, is also a veiled threat that maybe they're walking into his house to be shechted. So here too, the house of this isha, the bad isha, is a place of tevach, and they're afraid that the house of Yosef is not the place where the ace of the dover came true. Maybe it's like Eina Eish Bevesa. In other words, maybe Yosef was chayte with Eish Betifa and went down the wrong path, and now he's a dangerous person to them. Okay, that's what I want to bring from Perek Zayin. Now, fine. How you might say though, this is all seems to be a misplaced Havamim, because they're afraid that maybe Yosef is dangerous to them, right? The pasuk says, again, let's just pick one point. Pasuk says in Mishnah Perek Zayin that following the Isha, whatever she's called over there, the Isha Zara. Following the Isha Zara is like a shar going to Tevach. And if Yosef would have followed the Isha Zara and gone to Tevach with the Eish Betifa, then he would never have reached the Eish by Divaroi. He would never be the good king that he was destined to be. Instead, he'd be the bad guy that the brothers always thought he was. In which case, the brothers better avoid going into his house. And then, see, in this story, look, they're afraid to walk over the threshold. Beautiful, beautiful Tzusha to Mishnah. Very nice. But Saif, this whole fear that they had, should they go into Hashanah, now seems to be misplaced. Because ultimately, he says, because the fact is, he didn't follow Eishes Betifa, right? He's a good guy. And he's not trying to frame him. Okay? Right? Everything seems to work out. That's what it would seem now, but that's not correct. As we will see now, let's jump in. Okay, let's read Perek Pasuk Ches. This was mostly a continuation of last week, and now I want to read Pasuk Ches inside. Vayiru ha'anashim. Okay, so they're afraid. This we spoke about last week, that Yosef wanted to induce fear. Fear is very important, but fear from Hashem, not fear from him, because in Pasuk of Gimel he tells him, "Don't be afraid. Your God gave you a treasure, a matmoin." And it says in Mishlei, if you seek it like silver and like a matmoin, then you'll find Yiras Hashem. So the sense in that pasuk is, don't be afraid of me. Your God did something miraculous, so be afraid of him. So Yiras Hashem is very important in this whole story, as we've been discussing. And the fear that they have in pasuk Ches is ultimately channeled into Yiras Hashem. Okay, but they shouldn't be afraid of him, right? At least that's what he tells them in pasuk of Gimel, right? Don't be afraid. Everything's cool. The Maisa is not true. The Maisa, they actually do have good reason to be afraid to walk into this house, because if you go a little further in the story, at the end of Parshas Miketz, they ultimately do get framed, right? They said he's bringing us into the house. Why? To frame us. We'll finish the pasuk inside soon. To frame us for the Kesef Asher Ba'am Techesenu Batechila, right? Actually, he was bringing them into the house to frame them al Dvar Kesef Asher Ba'am Techesenu, but not Batechila. He's going to do it again. That's what the mistake was. He's the first money Beseder, but he's going to put back Kesef and Gavir. Everyone thinks about the Gavir, but there's also Kesef. In the end of Perek Mem Daled, he fills their sacks with, it's an interesting thing we have to, when we get there, he fills their sacks with Kesef and the Gavir. And then he comes after them, he's like, why'd you take the Gavir? and say, no one did it. Okay, well, whoever finds the Gavia is going to be my Evet train. And they find the Gavia in Binyamin, right? Meanwhile, they were finding the Kesef in every sack. Somehow no one thinks of that. I don't know, we have to forget. There was also that whole Kesef thing. But anyways, the point is that he wasn't there. They weren't brought into the house to be framed for the Kesef Batchila, but they were being brought into the house that they can be framed. And you look in Perek Mevdala Pasuk Ches, it's about stealing mi beis adinecha. They said we won't steal mi beis adinecha. So it's the bias. It's being brought into this bias, which ultimately is a source of danger for them. Okay. So there is actually what to be afraid of. So there's something interesting going on here, right? There's this tension. Is Yosef's house a dangerous place or not? They have good reason to think it might be because Yosef himself may have crossed the dangerous threshold and gone to Pteshes by Tifar. Oh, but Yosef didn't. So we know Yosef is a good guy and he's not dangerous. But actually, it turns out he is dangerous. But then actually, in Parashat Vayigash, turns out he's not dangerous. So we have to go through all these twists and turns, right? Meanwhile, that's the question. That question is just notice that. I want to read, let's read Pasuk Yud Ches inside. So they were afraid because they were being brought into the house of Yosef. And they said, why are they bringing us here? Why are they bringing us into this house? It must be it's about the money that came back. And notice that they said it came back as if it came back by itself. They have no idea how it got there. They're saying it just came. That's why we're being brought. His goylel aleinu, his not payel aleinu. So his goylel is like to roll. So it's like to take a pretext and to blame us for something. His not payel is to fall upon us and to take us as slaves and our donkeys. Okay, so what is this business? Why are they saying he's going to take us and our donkeys as slaves? Where do the donkeys fit in? So there are two pshatim in this pasuk, two different pshatim in this pasuk. One is that the donkeys are here because they're explaining why we're being framed. What does he have from being framed? Why would he be doing this to us? Because he set his eyes, he covets ourselves as slaves, and he wants our wealth, our donkeys. So that's where the donkeys come in, because they're justifying what to their mind is the plot. That this guy is trying to take us and our donkeys, possess us, and he wants a pretext, and that's why he's framing us. Okay. So it's not they're worried about the donkeys. This is an explanation of why he would do it. But others say, so this is what like a rabbi. Many Mepharshim say that way, and many Mepharshim say, Barashim, I would say the Rambam. The Rambam says that based on this pasuk, he says like this. He says famously, Chazal say some people care about their bodies more than their money. Some people care about their money more than their bodies. And the Rambam says, well, most people it's equal. And he quotes this pasuk. So they they were worried about themselves. They're afraid that they're going to be taken as slaves and that their donkeys are going to be taken, and that's an equal problem. Now, something's going on in the Rambam, because what's interesting is like this. The Rambam is talking about, it's giving in Tamei HaMitzvos, this is just parenthetical, completely parenthetical, but it's just interesting. Rambam's talking about Tamei HaMitzvos over there, okay? Tamei HaMitzvos, giving reasons for the mitzvahs, and he's explaining what's the reason why if an animal is nearby, you kill the animal. The animal didn't do anything wrong. So the Rambam gives, I'll talk about that, but the Rambam says that the reason is because that way the owner of the animal will make sure this doesn't happen to his animal because he doesn't want to lose his animal. Okay, so that will prevent that affair from happening in the first place. And then the Rambam says, because look, most people care about their animals just like they care about themselves, and he quotes this pasuk. Now that's completely superfluous from Rambam's point, because no one wants to lose an animal. What does the Rambam have to say that you care about your animal like yourself? Yeah, you don't want to lose your animal. But what's fascinating is that the context of the halacha that Rambam's talking about is a halacha where we treat animals like humans, because we always say, oh, the animals also chayiv mises bez. So he seems to be saying that there is some sort of idea encapsulated in this pasuk that animals and people are sometimes equivalent. Okay. Now, I don't know what this is all about. The donkeys have a major role over here in this parak, because first of all, let's just point out in pasuk of Daled, the pasuk makes the point that the donkeys were fed, and then in parak Mem Daled, the pasuk makes the point of parak Mem Daled pasuk Gimel, the morning light and the men along with the donkeys were sent off. Okay, why are the donkeys mentioned there? And then again, this one's not such a diak. What?
Yeah, it's strange.
It's very strange. With the donkeys and right? Yeah, they left. Right? What's the point of mentioning the donkeys? And then in pasuk Yud Gimel in Parak Dalet, it says They loaded up their donkeys and came back to the city. Okay, so why are the donkeys getting so much attention? So this is a question I don't know the answer, and we'll have to get back to it, okay? But I just wanted to mention the two pshakim in this pasuk. Either it's saying that they're explaining what is this guy up to. The answer is he's looking to take us and our donkeys. That's what he's interested in. And the other pshat is that they're afraid for themselves, and they're also afraid for the donkeys, and that obviously makes donkeys very prominent in this parasha, which they are anyways. We have to understand. Okay, but we have a question. I want to analyze something like this. They're saying that he's going to take them and their slaves and their donkeys, right? He's going to take them as slaves and their donkeys. Apparently, if you're caught stealing, you're taken as a slave. Now look at Perek Dalet, pasuk tes. There they say, whoever has the gavia will die. So akasha. So there they're suggesting that if you're caught stealing, you should die. And here they're saying if they're caught stealing, they would be taken as avadim. Okay, fair question. Which one is expected? So the answer is the very pashut. Here they're saying we're being framed because what? Obviously, he wants to gain something from us. It must be that he wants to take possession of us, because that's why he would frame us. He's not going to frame us to kill us. What does he gain from that? It must be that he really likes us to have strength, and he wants us to be his slaves, and he wants our donkeys to be his slaves. Those donkeys. Oh, I don't know if the donkeys are going to be slaves, but the donkeys will be, right? That's how you read this pasuk. Take us as slaves and our donkeys as slaves, or it's whatever. Fair enough. Take us as slaves and to take our donkeys. Fine. But so here it's talking about the fact that we actually have the kesef. It's true that the kesef is there, so probably we're being framed because he wants us to be donkeys. There, when they're saying whoever has the money should die, well, that's because they don't actually think that they're being framed. They think that the money, the gavia, is not there. That's why they're offering that to die, because they think the gavia is not there. If they thought the gavia was there, then they would think that it was put there so that they should be taken as avad, right? So it's very important to understand that this whole offering to die is only because they thought the gavia is not there. Right?
Also being dramatic.
Well, why are they being dramatic? Because they're trying to say the gavia is not there.
Because the first time they came and they brought back the stuff and they were taking the slaves.
Right.
So now he did it again and he layered the gavia on top. So they're like,
interesting. So now it's upping it.
They're upping the evidence.
Right. So let's see. Right. 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 So there's something very interesting going on. Okay. So look at pasuk tes. Pasuk yud. Pasuk yud. Now, what's Yosef's response? A very strange response, and there's many fruition in this. So they said like this. They said whoever has the gavia will die, and the rest of us will be slaves. And Yosef says a very strange statement. He says, "Gam ato kedivrechem kenu." Yes, as you said, now as well, or something. But then he says, "Asher yimatze ita yili evet atem tiyu nikim." So what's going on here? They offered whoever has it will die, and the rest of us will be slaves. And he says, "Yes, as you said, as well. The one who has it will be an evet, and the rest of them will be innocent." So all Mepharshim talk about this. How do you? He's offering them something else. How does he say? Also, yes, as you say. So I would suggest we'll have to get there more when we see there, but I think it's a good sushta. For now, we'll leave it just a suggestion for that pasuk. Yosef is telling them like this. He's like, okay, you don't mean what you're saying. You're saying you want to die because you don't think it's there. But when you thought it was there, the kesef, what you knew was there, you understood that the stakes are actually not about death, they're about avdos. So perhaps it's a remiss to Kedivrechem, like you said the first time. So Gam Ato Kedivrechem, this time again, we've been through this already, right? There's the Tchila, and then we have the second time. So we're doing the same thing. Don't worry, nothing's changed. Nothing's changed. The stakes have not changed. Like he's exactly saying, not like you said, right? He's saying the stakes are the same as they were the first time. And the reason is, I'm saying, because he's telling them, just like when the money was there, you understood, well, why would he put it there? Obviously, he wants us, not just to kill us. So I happen to know the gavia is there. And if the Gavia is there, so it's a very interesting thing. And basically, the point I'm trying to make is the following Iker point, and we'll see why this is very important to me. To say if the Gavia is there, we'll die, is not really true, because if the Gavia is there, that means someone planted it there, in which case he wants you to be in heaven, no one wants you to die. So if the Gavia is there, we'll die is only true if the Gavia is not there. But if the Gavia is actually there, then clearly something else is going on. Okay, and this is very, very important. Why? Because what's this whole story about at the end of Parshas Miketz? It's about the fact that this happened to this young man's mother, Binyamin. His mother had the same thing. She took the truffle from Lavan. And Yaakov said, "Asher yimotzei itai ne'avadecha loy." Pasuk. Asher timtza Elohecha lo yichya. Right, let's just see the pasuk because it's slipped my mind. Im asher timtza Elohecha lo yichya. Whoever you find your gods with will not die. And then the pasuk says right away, "V'lo yada Yaakov ki Rachel ginavasa." Because Yaakov doesn't think it's fair that Rachel should die because she stole the trophy. You only say whoever has it should die because you don't think anyone has it. So you didn't really mean it. Okay? So Yosef is telling the brothers, he's training them like this. He's saying, because this is the root of the whole story, is the end of Parshas Vayetze, and the root of the problem with Yosef is that his mother died, and the root of his mother dying is the end of Vayetze, which stole the trophy. So they think Yosef, this goes back to being a Vayeshev, they think Yosef is a bad guy because Vaharai, his mother died. And why does mother die? Because Tati said she deserves to die. And Yosef is correcting them. He's saying, no. The same way you only offered to die because it's basically your way of saying they're not there. But if they are there, you don't want to die because if they are there, it's clearly something else is happening that you didn't fathom.
Pointless for them to die.
Right. And as you know, one says something, right? You don't up the stakes unless you really think that you're gonna win, right? Yeah, sure. Right. It's pointless for them to die. And as the pasuk points out over there, Yaakov only said it because he didn't know. And this is what Yosef is teaching them: is that Yaakov doesn't know everything, same way you don't know everything, and that changes everything. Not everything that Yaakov said or did is Eisgehalten. The fact that he said my mother should die and then she died, it's only because it was ignorance. And maybe we should start realizing that we don't know everything, and act accordingly. Okay, fine. So let's talk a bit more about that. This pasuk Yudches says, very interesting expression. Lehis goylel aleinu ulehis napel. Okay, lehis goylel ulehis napel. Goylel is like to roll, so it's like a pretext to blame us for something, and napel is to fall on us. In Mishlei Perek Chavav pasuk of Zayin, we have this pasuk that says like this: the one who digs a pit will fall into it. The goylel even elov tashuv. Okay, it's Perek Chavav pasuk of Zayin, but that's the pasuk. That's the whole thing. The one who digs a pit will end up falling in it, and the one who rolls a boulder is going to come back to him. Now, without going into all the riots and everything, this is something that takes us back to the beginning of Vayetze, where Yaakov rolled the stone. And his rolling the stone over there was because he sees Rachel, and it has to do with his focus on Rachel. And Elov Yashuv, it comes back to haunt him because Rachel dies and he puts up an Evan on her. The pasuk talks about by the death of Rachel. There's an Evan over there. Evan, that parsha. Okay. And then with Koresh Shachas, so Yaakov is the one who rolled the stone and it comes back to get him. And he's the one who dug something and will fill into it. Now, perhaps it means, but I'm going to give another pshat tonight. Perhaps it means he's the only one, I think he's the only one who says that he dug his own grave. Because Yaakov said in Parashat Vayechi, the Kivri Asher Korisi Li Be'eretz Canaan Shamat Tikvarei. Okay, so Yaakov has this thing that he brings things on himself, like he did with Rachel, right? He said, yeah, and boom, and ended up hurting him but never really meant it, right? So here too, when they're afraid, so we have this goylel and this not, but like we have in that pasuk, which is referring to Yaakov to Yaakov and the way he brought things upon himself. And here Yosef is going to retrain the brothers about that. We have the same two terms. Okay. Now, so that's what he's teaching them. Okay, fine. Now I want to, so that's the main points. I think actually I probably overstated how complicated it was. No, I mean, it was pretty good. Good. Now I want to get to one other thing. What they say, they were afraid, right? The pasuk says they were afraid because they brought him to the house of Yosef. And what they come to Yosef and they told him, look, the money came back on its own. Lo yodani misam kaspei lam techasir. Pasuk chav beis. Lo yodani. We don't know who did it, right? And remember we spoke about the pasuk in Keheles, Parakeh, which talks about claiming that something is a mishkeh, a mistake, and a shkaga. Like Yaakov told them, tell them it's a mishkeh, tell them it's a mistake, tell them lo yodani. There's another lo yodani, which is the one we just mentioned, the Yaakov that says by Rachel, lo yoda Yaakov ki Rachel genavasam. And that's what Yosef is going to teach the brothers, that you don't know everything, about things you don't know. And okay, that's a very important message. What's the upshot of not knowing something? So let's look in Keheles Parak Hey. It talks about the last pasuk in Parak Dalet talks about not having knowledge, but then Keheles Parak Hey talks about the fact that God is in heaven and you are on earth, and therefore you should not say many words. And talks about dreams. We keep on going back to these psukim, and there pasuk Hey says, "Don't claim something is a mistake that's not going to work for you." And in middle it says, "Don't make nedarim." Rather, what's the upshot? Pasuk Rav, fear God. So in other words, if you don't have full knowledge, the upshot is fear Hashem. That's a good maskan. Something you should not do, and that's like we have in our pasuk. Yosef is come to train them to say you don't know everything. Lo yodanu misam kaspeinu. Tati lo yoda ki rachel genavasam. Otherwise, he wouldn't have made her die. So what's the upshot of that? Fear Hashem, and that's by Yiru Hanash. All very good, right? What should you not do according to Keheles Parakeh? Because you're on the earth, God is in heaven, you don't really know anything. What? Don't make the dark. Yaakov made a neder, Yeh Beis Elokim, which he didn't fulfill or he delayed fulfillment, and because of that, Rachel died, the Medrash says. So basically, Yosef is saying Yaakov did. We're working out Yaakov's problems, and the fact that Yaakov's averas brought problems to the family. That's what's being worked out of here. So number one, Yosef is telling the brothers like this: Yaakov had a dream. Okay, this takes us back to another whole theme about knowledge and lack of knowledge, a very important theme. Yaakov has a dream, and he wakes up and it says, and he makes a neder. So I'm going to make a Beis Elokim. Makes a neder. That's a very bad idea, because he didn't fulfill the neder. Why is it a bad idea? Because if you wake up and you say, lo yodati, it means you don't know Hashem. If you don't know Hashem, don't make a neder, because it means you don't know the future. If you don't know the future, you never know if you're going to be able to fulfill it or not. So what is a good idea? Vayira vayomer. That's good. Vayira, because that's a good maskana from lo yodati, to fear Hashem. That's what it says in Keheles. But don't make a neder. So Yaakov's lo yodati was a fact, and the upshot is to have yira. Similarly, over here, Yosef is training the brothers to know, let's respect, let's be humble about what we know and what we don't know. Let's recognize our ignorant, the things we don't know, and therefore let's do yira. And what does that mean again? So what is it? Why does it matter to things we don't know? Because sometimes we talk about things because we don't know, but we wouldn't say them if we did know. So therefore, we have to understand we don't know what we're talking about, and therefore what we're saying doesn't mean anything. And you're going to soon offer to kill yourselves, but you don't mean that. Don't worry. Okay, so that's what he's bringing it back to Yira. Okay, so now I wanted to get back to the point I was saying before, right? They're coming to the house. Is the house dangerous? Is the house not dangerous, right? So ultimately, it's going to prove maybe to be dangerous, right? And look in Mishlei Perek Zayin, the one we've been started with. It says over there that I'm sorry, Mishlei Perek Tes, with the Eishes Ksilos attempts the youth to come into the house, and he shouldn't cross the threshold. The lo yada ki b'rfa'im sham. He doesn't realize it's a place of death, and it leads to the depths of sha'il, of the grave. So he doesn't know that the house of this Isha leads to death, leads to the grave. This business of the sha'il and the house of the Isha appears in the Yosef story, because Yosef is in the bar in the house of Eshes Potiphar. So basically, the woman is associated with the bar, and he's there because he's framed for adultery. So the woman's house is the house where you go down to hell. The bar is like Sha'il. Yaakov says, "I'm going to go down to Sha'il." There's three things that are lined up in the stories of Vayeshev and Miketz at the end, which is the bar, Mitzrayim, and Sha'il. Those two things go together. And the path after that is the Isha, because you go to the Isha, you're going to end up in the bar, which is what Yosef ended up, right? Now, in this story, what's happening is that the brothers are entering this house, which may end up being a trap for them, and they may end up in the bar, right? Yosef is leading them into the bar. Remember, I said before, the pasuk in Mishlei says, so I said, who's the Koyer Shachas? Gadol Evan is Yaakov. He rolled a stone. Who's the Koyer Shachas? Maybe Yaakov, who dug a pit, dug his own grave, as it says in Vaychi. Alternatively, the Koyer Shachas is the brothers who dug a pit for Yosef, right? And the reason to believe that is because in Yirmiyah, Perek Yud Ches, Yirmiyah has a lot of parallels to Yosef. We spoke about this a lot in the past. Yirmiyah was thrown into a pit, and there the pasuk says, "Karu shucha lelachdeni." Yirmiyah says they dug a pit. So Perek Yud Ches. Yirmiyah says, I can't find the pasuk. I can't find the pasuk. Maybe it's wrong parak, but it says the Yirmiyah said like this: the people, here it is. Hayishulam tachas tova ra kikaru shucha lelachteni lenafshi. They're paying me. The people of his town are paying me evil instead of good because they dig a pit for me. So Yair was in the pit. Yosef was put in the pit. And what happens when he catches up with the brothers and he told the he says, "Lama shilamtem ra tachas tova." So Yosef, that's the Asher al-Beis said to the brothers. So the Lama shilamtem ra tachas tova, that you dug a pit for Yosef. So Koyer Shachas Ba'ipol means now it's the brothers' turn to end up in a pit. So the house that Yosef, that they're going into, is actually eventually at the end of Miketz, it's going to end up that it is a pit for them, at least for Binyamin. It's the way to the pit. The way to the pit is the Isha that Yosef withstood. Had he not withstood, he'd be a bad guy. But now he's using the negative side of his captivity, which is that he could have ended up being in the pit forever, and he's turning it back on them, and he's bringing them into his house, as the pasuk says, kasher al tevach. So I was saying, why does the pasuk say like this lashon of going into the Isha's house is like kasher al tevach if this house was okay? No, it's not, because Yosef is basically turning the tables against them and using what could have happened to him. He could have ended up in the pit forever, and now he's turning it back on them because they're the Koyer Shachas. Okay, and the point is like this. The point is that, again, I was saying we started with. I said till Yosef's time has come. That means till everything is going to be worked out. He's still at risk of the Isha. There's still that danger of like, look, you're leaving me Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim's a dangerous place with these temptations. So you deserve to suffer the fate of those people that would fall in those temptations. In other words, just like me, Yosef, who I'm still in sakana because I'm still not united with you and my father. So it's not es dvara yet. Not es dvara yet. Also means it's time of temptation where the man is not home, and I could do all sorts of bad things in Mitzrayim. And if I would do all sorts of bad things in Mitzrayim, I would end up in the pit that you guys dug for me. So I'm going to turn it back on you, and I'm going to lure you into my house. Just like I could be and could have been and still could be lured into the house of the Isha Zara and end up in the pit. And now I'm turning it back on you, and you're going to walk in like a Shar Teva. And that's the Rams of Tachlativ. Okay? Good?
Yeah.
Worked out. Shkoyach.